They laughed when you broke. They celebrated when you stayed silent. They pushed and pushed and pushed, believing there was a limit to how much pain a person could take. They mistook patience for weakness. They mistook kindness for surrender. And every betrayal, every sleepless night, every lie, every scar they left behind became fuel. They thought they were destroying you. They thought they were burying your spirit. But something happened that they never saw coming. Pressure didn't crush you. It changed you. The fear disappeared. The need for approval vanished. The person they once manipulated no longer exists. Because when a soul survives enough darkness, it stops begging for mercy. It stops explaining. It stops warning. And that's when people begin to panic. Because the same hands that created the pain are now staring at something they don't recognize. Something stronger. Something colder. Something impossible to control. They created a monster. And now they're terrified of what they awakened. They wanted you broken. Instead, they built the very thing that keeps them awake at night. They thought pain was your weakness. They thought every betrayal would make you smaller. Every failure would make you quit. Every disappointment would make you doubt yourself. They looked at your scars and saw damage. They looked at your silence and saw surrender. They looked at your struggles and assumed you were losing. But they never understood something powerful. Pain has two faces. It destroys the weak-minded, but it transforms those who refuse to stay on the ground. Every sleepless night taught you something. Every rejection sharpened your instincts. Every time people walked away, you learned how to stand alone. Every lie exposed the truth. Every setback forced you to become stronger than the person you used to be. The world has a strange way of teaching lessons. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't care if you're ready. It throws pressure at you when you're already tired. It tests you when you're already wounded. It waits until you're at your lowest point, and then demands more. Most people break there. Most people complain. Most people spend years blaming others. But something different happened inside you. Instead of running from the pain, you faced it. You sat alone with your thoughts. You stared at your fears. You looked directly at the disappointments that almost destroyed you. And little by little, something changed. You became less emotional, less desperate, less dependent on the opinions of others. You stopped chasing people who didn't value you. You stopped explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped expecting fairness from a world that rewards strength. Because pain taught you something comfort never could. Comfort creates habits. Pain creates warriors. Comfort makes people lazy. Pain forces people to evolve. Nobody talks about that part. Everyone wants success. Everyone wants power. Everyone wants confidence. But nobody wants the nights that create those things. Nobody wants the sacrifices. Nobody wants the loneliness. Nobody wants the moments when everything falls apart and you have to rebuild yourself with nothing but discipline and faith. But that's where real power is born. Not in applause, not in easy victories, not when life is smooth and everyone supports you. Real power is born in silence. When nobody believes in you, when people doubt your abilities, when friends disappear, when your heart is tired, when your mind is screaming for rest. And somehow you keep moving. Not because it's easy, not because you're fearless, but because you've already survived things that should have destroyed you. People see confidence now, but they never saw the tears. They see strength now, but they never witnessed the battles inside your mind. They see discipline now, but they don't understand the pain that built it. They think you changed overnight. They think success happened by accident. They think you're lucky. But luck didn't create this version of you. Pain did. Pain forced you to grow. Pain forced you to become wiser. Pain forced you to stop depending on people who were never meant to stay. Pain forced you to discover abilities you never knew existed. Because when everything is taken away, you finally realize what truly matters. You realize that approval means nothing. You realize that excuses solve nothing. You realize that fear only controls those who obey it. And once you've survived enough darkness, something strange happens. The things that used to scare you no longer have power. Failure doesn't terrify you. Criticism doesn't break you. Rejection doesn't stop you. Because you've already been through worse. You know what it feels like to lose. You know what it feels like to be abandoned. You know what it feels like to fight battles nobody else can see. And that's exactly why you're dangerous. Not because you're angry, not because you're seeking revenge, but because pain introduced you to a version of yourself that comfort could never create. The storms they thought would destroy you became your training. The wounds they thought would end you became your lessons. The pressure they thought would crush you became the fire that shaped your mind. And while others spent their lives avoiding hardship, you were being forged by it. Every scar became experience. Every disappointment became wisdom. Every loss became strength. Every struggle became fuel. Every painful chapter became proof that you were stronger than the circumstances trying to bury you. Because pain never came to finish you. It came to reveal what was hidden inside you. They underestimated you, not once, not twice, over and over again. They looked at your quiet moments and called them weakness. They looked at your kindness and mistook it for submission. They saw your patience and assumed you lacked the courage to fight back. They thought your dreams were too big. They thought your ambition was unrealistic. They thought your failures were permanent. And perhaps the biggest mistake they made was believing they knew who you were based on who you used to be. People love putting limits on others. It makes them feel safe. It makes them comfortable. Because if they convince themselves that you can't rise, they never have to question why they refuse to rise themselves. So they laughed. They doubted. They ignored. They whispered behind your back. They watched your struggles and decided your story was already over. They judged your present and forgot that every great transformation begins in silence. They saw the chapter. They never imagined the ending, because people are experts at measuring appearances. But they know nothing about hidden battles. They know nothing about the nights you spent questioning yourself. They know nothing about the sacrifices you made while nobody was watching. They know nothing about the discipline that slowly replaced your excuses. They know nothing about the tears, the disappointments, the lonely moments that changed the way you think. They only saw the outside, and that's why they got it wrong. They underestimated your ability to adapt. They underestimated your resilience. They underestimated your hunger. They underestimated how much pain you could survive without giving up. They underestimated how dangerous determination becomes when someone has nothing left to lose. Because there comes a moment when disappointment stops hurting. A moment when rejection no longer controls you. A moment when being ignored becomes normal. And once that happens, something powerful begins to grow. You stop needing approval. You stop waiting for permission. You stop asking people to believe in you. You simply go to work, quietly, patiently, relentlessly. While they spend their energy talking, you spend yours improving. While they laugh, you learn. While they doubt, you prepare. While they sleep, you build. Because you understand something they don't. Results speak louder than explanations. You don't need everyone to understand your vision. You don't need everyone to support your mission. You don't need applause to stay focused. The opinions of people who never believed in you were never meant to decide your future. And yet, they kept underestimating you. They underestimated your discipline because they thought motivation was all you had. They underestimated your intelligence because you never felt the need to prove it. They underestimated your patience because they confused silence with weakness. They underestimated your confidence because they expected insecurity. They underestimated your spirit because they judged you through their own limitations. They expected you to break. They expected you to quit. They expected you to become another unfinished story. But pressure did something strange. Instead of destroying you, it forced you to evolve. Every insult became motivation. Every rejection became fuel. Every moment of disrespect became another reason to keep pushing forward. Not to prove them wrong. Not to seek revenge. Not to make them regret their decisions. But because you finally understood your value. And once a person understands their value, the world changes. They stop settling. They stop chasing validation. They stop shrinking themselves to make others comfortable. They stop apologizing for wanting more. They stop allowing fear to control their decisions. because they realize something most people never discover. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You only need enough belief to keep taking the next step. And step by step, day by day, struggle after struggle, you become unrecognizable. Not because success happened overnight, not because life suddenly became easier, but because consistency quietly changed everything. And one day, the same people who overlooked you begin to notice. The same people who laughed begin to watch. The same people who doubted begin to wonder. Because success has a strange way of making people forget what they once said. But you remember. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with awareness. Because being underestimated taught you lessons comfort never could. It taught you patience. It taught you discipline. It taught you self-respect. It taught you to trust your own vision when nobody else could see it. It taught you to keep walking, even when the crowd disappeared. It taught you that loneliness can become strength. It taught you that silence can become power. It taught you that doubt from others means nothing when your purpose is stronger than their opinions. And while they were busy deciding what you could never become, you were becoming something they never expected. Now they fear what they made. The same people who once laughed now watch in silence. The same voices that dismissed you suddenly pay attention. The same hands that pushed you down are confused by the strength standing in front of them. Because they thought pain would destroy you. They thought betrayal would weaken you. They thought rejection would make you disappear. They thought disappointment would convince you to settle for less. They never imagined that every attack, every insult, every broken promise would become fuel for something they could no longer understand. People are comfortable when you stay small. They are comfortable when you seek their approval. They are comfortable when you question yourself. But the moment you stop asking for permission, everything changes. The moment you stop begging to be accepted, people become uncomfortable. Because confidence exposes insecurity. Discipline exposes laziness. Growth exposes excuses. And suddenly, the people who once ignored you begin paying attention. Not because they changed, but because you did. You stopped chasing. You stopped explaining. You stopped wasting energy trying to convince people to recognize your worth. You became focused. You became disciplined. You became impossible to manipulate. And that scares people. Not everyone wants to see you rise. Not everyone celebrates your transformation. Some people preferred the old version of you, the version that doubted itself, the version that tolerated disrespect, the version that stayed quiet out of fear, the version that needed validation, because that version was easy to control. But something happened. The pressure became too much. The lies became too obvious. The betrayals became too frequent. And slowly, the person they were used to disappeared. Not because you became heartless. Not because you became cruel, but because you finally understood your value. You learned that protecting your peace isn't selfish. You learned that saying no isn't weakness. You learned that walking away doesn't mean defeat. You learned that not everyone deserves access to your energy. And once you understand that, people notice. They notice because they can no longer influence your decisions. They notice because guilt no longer controls you. They notice because fear no longer speaks louder than your purpose. And for some people, that's terrifying, because they spent years believing they knew you, years believing they understood your limits, years believing they had power over your emotions, years believing they could predict your next move. But now they can't, because pain changed the rules. The person they once knew no longer reacts the same. The person they once underestimated no longer seeks approval. The person they once ignored no longer waits for recognition. And uncertainty makes people nervous, because people fear what they cannot control. They fear independence. They fear confidence. They fear discipline. They fear people who have learned how to stand alone, because a person who has survived loneliness no longer fears abandonment. A person who has survived failure no longer fears losing. A person who has survived betrayal no longer fears disappointment. And when fear loses its power over someone, that person becomes difficult to stop. Not because they are stronger than everyone else, but because they are stronger than the person they used to be. That's what people fail to understand. The greatest battle was never against enemies. It was against doubt. against insecurity, against fear, against every voice inside your head that whispered that you weren't enough. And after fighting those battles, the opinions of others become smaller. The criticism becomes quieter. The negativity becomes weaker, because you've already faced worse. You've already survived the nights nobody knows about. You've already carried pain nobody could see. You've already rebuilt yourself when everything around you was falling apart. And that experience changes a person. It changes the way they think. It changes the way they speak. It changes the standards they accept. It changes the people they allow into their lives. And people notice. Some admire it. Some respect it. Some envy it. Some fear it, because they remember the version of you they thought would never rise. They remember the moments they doubted you. They remember the times they underestimated you. And now they're watching someone they no longer recognize. Not because success changed you. Not because power changed you. But because suffering revealed a strength they never believed existed. The same storms they thought would bury you taught you patience. The same wounds they caused taught you wisdom. The same pressure they created forged discipline. The same darkness they expected you to fear became the place where your mind learned to survive. And now when they look at you, they don't see the person they once controlled. They don't see the person who accepted less. They don't see the person who lived in fear. They see someone who walks with purpose. Someone who no longer bends for approval. Someone who no longer explains their value. Someone who no longer waits for permission. Someone who discovered that strength becomes dangerous when it is born through pain. Someone they never expected to become impossible to control.